Welcome to Akable Land, where we cut through the noise and face hard truths head on. Today, we are staring down a brutal reality. Why Africa, this powerhouse of resources and resilience, might stay stuck as a third world continent forever. Yeah, I said it, till eternity. With diamonds on the foot, oil gushing, and a young population that could dominate the world. Why are we still drowning in poverty? The answer boils down to one core poison: our leaders' blind selfishness and greed. Why they chase personal empires, insecurity rips communities apart, hunger starves futures, illiteracy changes minds, pandemics ravage bodies, and a cascade of crises overrun the continent. This isn't fate, it is failure. Over the next 15 minutes, we will unpack it all with raw, real stories and no punches pulled. Subscribe and let us dive in, because ignoring it won't make it go away. Let's start with the rot at the top. Leadership gripped by greed. Africa isn't poor, it is poorly led. Corruption isn't a side hustle, it is the system. According to Transparency International's Global Corruption Barometer, 58% of Africans say corruption has spiked in the last year, with South Africa leading the charge, where over 80% feel it is worsening. The African Development Bank estimates corruption costs Africa 25% of its GDP annually. That is trillions vanishing into thin air while roads crumble and hospitals empty. Think about it. Leaders promise change but pocket billions. In Nigeria, corruption has eroded trust and stalled growth, with everyday folks paying bribes just to survive, and insecurity spreading everywhere like wildfire. Afrobarometer polls showed Nigerians increasingly see corruption as rampant. It is not just theft, it is a mindset. Leaders prioritize yachts over youths, Swiss accounts over schools. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, one of the most corrupt spots in 2025, resources like cobalt fuel global tech but leave locals in squalor. Greed blinds them to real issues, turning potential into perpetual underdevelopment. As one expert puts it, Africa's crisis is $100 billion corruption black hole, draining economies and fueling unrest. If leaders won't address this, eternity looks bleak. But greed doesn't stop at bank accounts. It lets insecurity fester like an open wound. Africa's conflicts aren't random. They are amplified by leaders who ignore warnings for personal gain. In 2024 to 25, persisting wars compound governance failures, threatening fragile regions. From Sudan's civil strife to jihadist threats in the Sahel, insecurity redraws maps and breeds terrorism. The United Nations notes escalating conflict across some regions, challenging peace efforts. Impact: devastating. Conflicts disrupt agriculture, trade and investment, spiking food insecurity and job losses. In West Africa, rising violence risks erasing economic gains, locking nations in war economies. Distrust in government fuels this. Marginalized groups rebel when excluded, worsened by climate and hunger, and push for religious dominance. Leaders could invest in stability, but greed diverts funds to cronies. Result: humanitarian disasters, economic decline, and social chaos. In 2025, armed violence drives acute food crises in 14 of 15 hotspots globally, many in Africa. If insecurity overruns unchecked, development will never happen. Just forget it. Now, hunger, the silent killer stalking millions. While leaders feast, over 282 million Africans, one in every five, face severe food insecurity in 2025. The United Nations 2025 report shows hunger rising in Africa, with 307 million chronically undernourished, 20% of the population, one-fifth. By 2030, 512 million could be starving, 60% in Africa. Conflicts and climate escalated, but leadership failure is key. Funds for aid rot in corruption. In Southern Africa, droughts and crises deepen hunger, with Africa hosting 40% of those unable to afford healthy diets. The Global Report on Food Crisis notes 295 million in acute hunger, spreading faster than responses. Stories like Mali and South Sudan, where famine looms by 2030, highlights how greed ignores warning. Hunger isn't just empty bellies, it is stunted kids, lost productivity, and endless poverty. Leaders could prioritize agriculture, but selfishness starves solutions. Illiteracy. It is the chain binding Africa's future. Leaders talk big on education, make promises, and live, but greed leaves it in ruins. In 2025, 90% of African kids can't read a simple text by age 10. UNESCO warns 4 in 5 10-year-olds lack basic comprehension. Over 182 million adults are illiterate, with one-fifth of kids aged 6 to 11 out of school. In sub-Saharan Africa, 80% of grade 2 learners struggle, disconnecting access from outcomes. Africa has the world's highest illiteracy rate, quality lacking even in school. 8 of 10 lowest youth literacy countries are African. Challenges: fees, distances, overworked teachers, ignored by greedy elites. In low-income nations, 36% of school-age kids are out, versus 3% in rich ones. 1 in 5 students lack proficiency in reading or math by primary end. Without education, innovation dies, perpetuating underdevelopment. Leaders greed divert funds, dooming generation. Pandemics and health crises, they expose greed's deadly toes. COVID-19 hammered Africa, dropping GDP by billions and revenues by $45 billion. In South Africa, GDP plunged 51% in 220. Sub-Saharan growth slowed to 1.5 to 2.5% in 2020 due to disruptions. Households suffered income loss, deepening poverty. Global ties amplified economic damage. In South Africa, it wasn't inequality. Emerging diseases could cost $200 billion, with job losses sparking unrest. Leaders' underinvestment in health due to greed leaves us vulnerable, turning crises to economic black holes. And the rest, debt, climate, inequality, all overrun because leaders focus on self over solutions. Greed and praise, greed and praise singing keep Africa underdeveloped. Poor infrastructure, conflicts all stem from misallocated funds. Until we demand better, eternity might mean endless third world status. But you can change it. Vote, protest, educate.